Bitcoin accumulation country. My name is Phil. This is the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. We are in season 3 and this is episode 5. Hope everybody's having a great week. Get ready for a really fun episode because I got to sit down and talk with Giaccomo Zucco. It was a really good time. He is by far one of my favorite toxic Bitcoin maximalists that there is out there. And anyways, I had such a great time with him. There really is nothing else to say. So here we go, guys. My talk with Giaccomo Zucco. All right, I've got a very special guest with me today on the Fun with Bitcoin podcast. I find his brand of maximalism very humorous and witty, and it always gets me to think. And if nothing else, I'm always laughing. I've got with me Mr. Giaccomo Zucco. Giacomo, thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all these nice words. I will send you the Bitcoin payment right along for this nice introduction.
Oh, but I don't know if I really want Bitcoin right now, from you. You may have something way better.
But Grisham law and Thiers law say that you should spend the bad money first and keep hoarding the good money as a thesaurization. So the real good money, which is Zuximaximalist, of course, I will not send it to you. I will just send a shitty money like Bitcoin, which we all know it's old, high fees, stagnant development, and I will keep Zux for myself. So sorry, forget it.
Okay. You know what? I have to work my way up, to get those more pumpamental type of coins, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to deserve it.
I have to deserve it. I get it. I get that. I appreciate that. So look, I've like I was telling you before we started recording, I've been following you on Twitter, since since I first got into Bitcoin, and I just find you absolutely hilarious, which is awesome. It's definitely good to have a great sense of humor, but at the same time, you also bring up very valid points. It's kind of interesting, it's like we're making fun of ourselves, and I think that you kind of bring that out, you kind of help show us that, like how stupid we kind of sound when we're making no sense. So I appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah, sometimes it can become a little bit tricky. Like when I do some, for example, my famous maximalist presentation in Riga 2 years ago. It was meant to be kind of ironic. I mean, not literally ironic, because it was what I said was basically paradoxically true as an heuristic, but it was not literal. And people on Twitter had some problem to distinguish when I'm serious and when I'm not. So I will also. It's a lot of pressure right now, because when I started, I tried to be serious, and then I just throw in some jokes here and then. And now people invite me to conference in order to do like some Bitcoin stand up, which is becoming a lot of pressure. So harder and harder.
I can understand that. Now that's it. It's like all your work has preceded you. So
yeah, it's a niche. I created my niche.
No pressure, but pressure. So,
yeah, right.
Okay, so before we get into the next better Bitcoin, which is Zux. Yeah. I personally don't know your rabbit hole story. I don't really know how you got into Bitcoin. I've looked at your profile. Like I can't figure out like what you do. So man, like, tell me the Giacomo story.
So the Giacomo story starts from at least 3 different perspectives. Back, I am a physicist. Basically, I have an education in physics, and after my degree, I started to work as a technology consultant in Accenture, the multinational corporation. And I was working there. I got married, and then it was, I think, 2013 that I started to hear about Bitcoin from 3 completely different perspectives. So the first time I heard about Bitcoin, I think it was actually late 2012. It was in a group of people that were organizing a pro Julian Assange manifestation. So it was already back then. There was the Assange problem, of course. It was the WikiLeaks problem, is not coming up just now with the incredible situation with the kidnapping and the denial of a fair trial for no accusation at all to a journalist. It was a problem back then already. And in these groups that were like following a little bit, the WikiLeaks slash online privacy, it was pre-Snowden, I think, but it was basically the kind of Snowden talk. So this group of people was like privacy oriented advocates, for a little bit contiguous to some hacker ideology, hacktivist ideology. These were basically mostly focused on this kind of stuff. So Bitcoin was mentioned as the possible privacy money, the money for the dark market online, the first mentions of the Silk Road and this kind of stuff. Then, basically at the same time, I think it was just 2 months later or something like that, I started to hear about Bitcoin in a completely different political group uh, I was uh, I was part of as well, which was like the Austrian economics gold bags and the Fed kind of group. And the nice thing was that these people were talking about Bitcoin from a purely micro and macroeconomic perspective, as a monetary thing. Actually, nothing to do with privacy and online hacking, dark market, dark web, nothing at all like that. They were mostly academic, still a bit anti-system. But what impressed me is that, so I was part of both groups, but I was basically the only intersection, the only overlap, because these two groups were both a little bit anti-system, well, very much anti-system, but very different. Like the first group were all like very liberal, model libertarian, free drugs, free love, kind of socialist leaning people, very left wing, in order to simplify a little bit. And the second group was very like conservative, intellectual, not really activist, more intellectual, and very you could call it probably a right wing leaning. And so I was always considering these groups completely unrelated, except for me as the only overlap. And then I found that in late 2012, Bitcoin started to pop up in both groups, and I was like discussing with the ones and with the formers and with the latter about the same thing. And then like at the I would say probably it was March or April 2013. Actually, this kind of stuff started to pop up at my job as well, because people inside payment industry started to discuss Bitcoin as a possibility for a revolution in permissionless innovation in payments, like the Internet of Money, the Internet of Payments. So more like a business kind of approach. And so finally, I realized that all the things that I was doing, basically my two spare time activism hobbies, political hobbies, and my profession in a way were all contaminated by this stuff. And so it was like completely that was a very very steep and fast rabbit hole. I mean, I didn't enter gradually. I fall down so fast that after 3 or 5 months of obsession, I would call it, because I was basically not sleeping. I was talking about Bitcoin all the time. I was thinking about Bitcoin all the time. And then my wife, I remember it was May of 2013, and my wife said basically, you are basically, you should just quit and do Bitcoin stuff. We can allow it. It's doable. And so I did it. I quit my job in 2013, and then my idea was to become a Bitcoin entrepreneur. And that was a very bad idea from a financial point of view. So I joined probably probably 7 different startups. Some of them were never as the only founder. I was always like a co-founder slash consultant slash something like that. And basically all the financial advantage that I got with some Bitcoin I bought in 2012 completely disappeared along 2013 and 2014, because before I've lost, of course, my private key in a tragic boat in accident as everybody else. But even before that, I actually lost most of my Bitcoin, early adoption Bitcoin, trying to fund Bitcoin startups. One was a mining firm in Switzerland and was like super I closed it down with a huge loss. And one was like a blockchain for tracking and supply chain management. Very bad idea, as I discovered very soon. And one was actually Green Address Bitcoin wallet, and now is a Blockstream Green with Lawrence Naum. So that one survived after I left it, and is doing very very good. So I'm happy for that. And then in 2015, I started in May 2015. I started my own company, and the idea was basically this: since all my Bitcoin startup idea were just bleeding money, even the successful one like Green Address was great, is still a great wallet, but there was never a revenue model, never, and there still isn't a very clear revenue model. Like you have a problem because if it's a good Bitcoin business, you don't have a revenue model. Like it's an open source software, so you don't have intellectual property. It's an open standard, so you don't have a lock-in of your users. It's a private thing, so you don't try to capture the private information of your users, sensitive data. So you have basically nothing from the monetary perspective, from the monetization perspective. So my businesses were just burning my money, and I was surviving and providing for my family with just consultancy jobs at banks, mostly at that time Italian banks. Like the business, the innovation manager of the bank. He wants to know about cryptocurrencies and blockchain. So at the end, he will ask me, and he will give me some money to explain them, then to review a project, to put them in contact with the developer, to organize a proof of concept. So I decided that that was the only business model that I had found up to date. And so basically, what I did was getting out of a Bitcoin startup, and I created this kind of Bitcoin research center. It was called Blockchainlab, with a very scammy name. I mean, nowadays I would stay away from anything with blockchain name in it. But back then, I decided to compromise with this very scammy name in order to lure clients in. And so the idea was, you hire my company for a consultancy. I use part of my budget. I would say 90% of my budget in order to fund Bitcoin development. So I rented a space in Milan where I hosted for 3 years with my wife all the best Bitcoin developers in the world. So I was paying for them like travel, accommodation, food, office space, and I was trying to invite them at the same level. For example, we have to work on notarization, so I will invite Peter Todd with Riccardo Casatta. If we have to work with Lightning, I will invite Lighty Labs with Blockstream, with Amico Pay. So I was trying to match together all the different styles and sensitivities and priorities and ideas in order to boost the stuff. Sometimes I gave them some projects to do, some money, and I had a small team of people which job was to assist these developers, listen to them, grab information, of course with their consent, structure the information, and sell the information as reports, workshop, consultancy, and stuff like that. So that was the job. In late 2018, we had a daughter, and so I decided to sell my company. And I quit. I still do some consultancy job, especially in Switzerland, because Italian banks, they basically were stuck at the, let's say, proof of concept stage because they couldn't do anything because of regulation, while Swiss banks, they actually could do production stuff. Some of my clients, Swiss banks clients, they are offering Bitcoin custodianship for their institutional clients. So it became more mature and more serious as a business. So I moved to Switzerland, and basically that's the end of the long rabbit hole story. What I'm doing now is mostly two things. One thing is teaching, so I'm doing workshop around, mostly B2B for banks, but partially also B2C, like the one I will do in Las Vegas in February and so on. And I'm also doing like I'm gathering donation, for example, from Bitfinex, Poseidon, Fulgur Venture. I gather this donation with my nonprofit, and I pour this donation into some open source efforts.
Man, that is serious. I I really had no idea that you did that. That's really cool, by the way. Hosting the devs and getting them to work on stuff, like that's that's pretty
It,
intense.
It was great. It was great. It was also sustainable, I have to say. Unlike my first businesses, that was sustainable, not scalable, because you
Yeah.
cannot make money with that model. It's just and
No.
also not sustainable from a family point of view because me and my wife basically spent all days, all night, and all the weekends there in order to keep it alive. So when we had to retire from that, it was basically impossible to continue. But it was very very cool. We had some great moments there.
That's very cool. I just want to go back to something that you said about that you approached, Bitcoin hit you from three different perspectives, right? It was the like kind of the anarchist perspective, the Austrian economics perspective, right? And you had mentioned you're like, well, they're both, they're both kind of similar, and I wanted to explain that, like the gold bugs have a distrust in the government issued money, whereas the anarchists have a distrust just in the system as a whole. So they are absolutely related, and it's interesting that it hit you. I'm so surprised because I actually I know Accenture pretty well, and that's a serious kind of company that it's interesting, right? Like it doesn't really get talked about in the news, but Accenture is incredibly powerful. So
Yeah.
that and the fact that they were asking you about BTC.
Well, it was inside the job environment, but it was not really. I mean, some presentation, some internal, some internal skill show. It was not really any assignment or anything like that, but it
Oh,
started to
okay,
pop up among colleagues.
okay,
So in Accenture environment, especially in the payment business, I was a system designer, so I was working with payment guys, and there was some discussion about that.
very cool. Um, I want to go back also and just to ask you about the Bitcoin businesses. So, um, you said that you had that none of them were really profitable. Um, But I've noticed something that when it comes to Bitcoin is that everybody just seems to build without the idea of profitability in mind. you know, it's like
Yeah,
it seems
yeah,
that
that's true.
like people just decide, all right, you know what, I want to make this. I don't really care, and it's that concept of build it and the people will come. Um,
It's true. It's true. I mean, it works from a aggregate level as a system, as an organism, as a social organism. It works. The fact that Bitcoin is cool, that you want to see Bitcoin succeeding, maybe the fact the only real monetization mode, which is I own Bitcoin, maybe. Except for the boating accident, and so I want Bitcoin to be successful, and so I will work on Bitcoin. So this model works from in aggregate. Individually, it is basically never scalable, and it's not always sustainable in the long run. So the problem is not really. I don't see a problem for Bitcoin. I just see some problem for people that wants to. They want to basically live and work and spend their profession inside Bitcoin. That's very tricky.
yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. It's I think right now maybe the ecosystem is still, even though it's big, it's just maybe not big enough, you know.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you basically restrict it to the non-scammy part of the ecosystem, which is
Yes.
very very small.
The non-scammy part is very small and very difficult. Like I could tell you, like I'm starting to build these 3D light, these cases for lightning nodes, and
Hmm.
it's, I mean, they're already a bunch that exist, and I've already bought some, and they're very cool and everything, but to be honest, I'd say the market for that stuff is very small, and
Yeah,
it is very difficult, with the exception of like stickers and clothing, um, in terms of stickers, clothing, hardware wallets. um, yeah,
yeah, that's basically all. I think
I'm
I'll
trying to
give a
think of
talk.
other
Yeah.
stuff.
So basically, I think your idea is you just sell swags, so
Yeah.
hats or stickers, and that's the only scalable business model in Bitcoin. Then you have a specialized hardware like Nodl or ASICs as well, or hardware wallets, so very very high end hardware. and that's like it works, but with giant entry barriers. Like you cannot wake up tomorrow and say, I want to print an ASIC chip. You can't. You need like foundries. So
Yes.
so there are millions of entry barriers. The same goes for hardware wallets. Actually, you cannot really improvise a serious hardware wallet. Or maybe you can still do that, but you will not be able to do that very very soon. And so this is a scalable business, but with huge entry barriers. Then there is the exchange business, which is very profitable and scalable. But the problem is not. The problem is that it's a legal. I mean, your 90% of your costs are legal, and I don't want to spend my life dealing with lawyers. Frankly, I mean, I'm not in Bitcoin in order to spend all my life looking at regulations, KYC bullshit, and lawyers and this kind of stuff, regulatory arbitrage. So it's a scalable. I respect people doing exchange. I mean, I'm happy that Bitfinex does makes money to sponsor some of the projects I do. I'm happy that Kraken and Hodl and other great exchanges make some money, but I don't want to do that. So you are left with basically content creation, which is also which is like a super small cake for a lot of competition. I mean, either you are a serious professional like McCormack, or you are like I don't know, Saifedian with his books, but content creation is not really something scalable in general.
I agree. And you know what? That kind of brings me to the next point, right? Is that okay? So I mean, because it's such a because the ecosystem is still building and everything, and right now it's, let's be honest, like the majority, I'd say the majority of the innovation is happening, contrary to shitcoiners' belief, it's happening actually on the Bitcoin, actually like on the Bitcoin base layer and on the second layer, where we're getting,
Sure.
Schnorr
Yeah.
and Taproot and all that good stuff. So to me, like, I don't really care that right now all we have is swag and stuff. But what I do want to mention is that what is the new and emerging thing that we have is the well, I shouldn't say new, but the emerging piece that we have is the money back proposition, through platforms like Lolly or through savings platforms like River Financial, where you have the dollar cost averaging, so it's taking on that next, that step of much more, the store of value.
Yeah,
And
let's. So maybe I would have to. I say the exchange as the only scalable business model. Maybe we could expand it to financial services on top of Bitcoin.
oh, cool.
So Bitcoin has some characteristics. So you can probably leverage onboarding. Onboarding will be huge because a lot of money will move from shitty fiat to digital gold. So if you put yourself in between, I guess you can make a lot of money in a sustainable way. The main problem that I see, the reason I never really address that is that it's a very it's a kind of being a gateway between existing finance and the new finance of the future. You have to deal a lot with financial regulation, which is super annoying.
Yeah, I can't even, to be perfectly honest, like just as an individual investor, like Bitcoin aside, right? Just dealing with stocks and stuff. Just as an individual investor, that's annoying enough, and there's not even
Yeah.
that much to it. So I wouldn't even want to imagine the legal regulations and hurdles that you have to go through for an exchange.
Yeah, especially after you have after you have fallen in the rabbit hole. So now that you try Bitcoin, that you know Bitcoin, now that you are dreaming about a cypherpunk future, now you have to spend your life filling forms in order to get licenses. That's I mean, I respect people who does that, and I'm happy that there is something doing that because it's needed as a bridge, but it's so boring.
I absolutely, absolutely. I think like it takes a special type of personality to be able to do that all day long.
Yeah, yeah, but it's needed. I mean, add any kind of gateway. When you have a revolution, you need to bridge words, and so people doing bridges, people building bridges. They of course they cannot stay on the new world only. They have to keep one foot in the new world and one foot in the old one, and so that's needed. And we are lucky that somebody is doing that.
Oh, absolutely. So, tell me about I started to. Okay, so I guess we're gonna back up, right? So we're gonna talk a little bit about Hex and but more specifically, not Hex, specifically your interview, your discussion with Richard Hart, because even though I can't stand Richard Hart, just in terms of the arrogance and the way that he acts, I just think like there's different ways of being, of being confident and charismatic, and I just think that his angle is cheap. But anyways, so he was on, so he had you on, and you guys had a very civilized, I'd say, conversation, which was really interesting. And you started to shill this really interesting project. So if you could tell us a little bit about what is it, Zuxcoin?
Zuxbox. Yeah,
Zuxbox.
Zuxbox. Well, it is not an interesting project. It is the project. I mean, this is the only real stuff going on. Everything else is basically bankrupt at this point. No, it was so. It was a very funny. So the point is that in that moment, that was the pump moment in Hex. Richard was trying to get visibility at all costs. He wanted to. His need was to maximize views and discussion and buzz around him and around Hex, regardless of actual content. And he's also, I mean, you're right, he's cheap, he's very dishonest, but he's also very, very skilled.
Yes.
I mean, he's a very serious con artist. He was doing that before. He's not like the Craig Wright kind of con artist. Craig Wright is like the crazy kind of con artist, like a religious devotion by some really deranged individuals. While Richard is more classical. It's more like typical, I don't know, self-help gurus or this kind of guys that are very, very good with rhetorics and stuff like that. So what he needed was to maximize visibility. And so most of the good people, you have this kind of dilemma. Like if I go, he's inviting everybody. If I go, I give him what he wants. I give him visibility. If I don't, I just leave him completely without any kind of contradictory, spreading falsities and spreading lies in a very able and skinned way. So the first weeks, I have seen the global reaction, and my reaction as well was let's just ignore him. But then I was really not satisfied, because ignoring this kind of people in this kind of environment where the symmetric where the knowledge asymmetry is huge, ignoring basically creates the foundations for infinite growing on this kind of scams. Like, one of the reasons we have the scam coin crypto environment in the shape it is today, and especially in the shape it was in 2017, was that back in 2013 and 2014, the basically the the password, the mantra among honest and competent people that I was starting to know and to meet was basically, let's ignore. Don't play their game. They want to claim that they want to claim sharding, DAOs, DeFi, whatever, world computer, proof of stake. Don't or big blocks don't really engage, because they are not honest. So it's not an honest discussion. Ignore them. But the effect of that was actually, after 2 years, a huge visibility for them without any kind of contradictory. So you have to shift. I think you have to shift your strategy, or your tactic, at least, from ignoring to engaging when ignoring fails. So I've seen the same with Richard. Ignoring failed, then people started to engage, but engaging with him was very, very hard. Like Steven Livera tried to engage in complete good faith, and he was butchered by Richard, because Richard used any kind of possible bad faith trick in that interview.
Oh
So
yeah.
Steven was he was good, he was prepared, he was honest, he was competent, but that was not enough, because there was like I mean, Richard was manipulating the audio levels. He was switching continuously between uh, aggressive rhetoric and the sea lioning. Like when Steven was trying to answer back, he was like, "Oh, why are you so close-minded? Let's just have a Socratic debate." And then, as soon as Steven was lowering the guard. He was like super aggressive. This kinds. I mean, you suck. There is a blockstream conspiracy. So he had the skill to move across different kind of rhetorics. Roger
Yes.
Ver. Roger Ver doesn't have many rhetorics, just one. I mean, babies are dying and blockstream conspiracy, and that's very repetitive. It works for some people, but it's very easy to counteract if you are a little bit. I mean, a lot of people destroyed Roger. Tone Vase destroyed him. John Carvalho destroyed him. Most people with some rhetoric skill can destroy Roger Ver, but with Richard it was very very difficult. So he was tagging me like, Giacomo Zucco, do you want to debate? Do you want to debate? Do you want to debate? And I was like, I don't know, because so at a certain point, I realized that there was one strategy not yet tried, not at least not at a good extent. That was basically just trolling him, and so I decided to try this performer art, and so I created this website, which is zaxbucks.win. So guys, if you want to invest and to throw you or you're saving here, the website is zuxbux.win. Please, I need your money. So what I did was basically creating a simple page, and you can see it, and the page says basically the first section is Bitcoin is okay. Bitcoin is an old, almost 11 years, boring, non-profit, aka made by poor people who don't even drive Lambos, possibly already dead. And I linked the Bitcoin obituaries, nerdy experiment aimed at the creation of a decentralized digital equivalent of what was once physical gold, an open global permission and blah blah blah. And then I put the link to the beautiful bitcoinresources.com website by Dergigi, which is one of the greatest collection of resources out there. So my hope was that maybe somebody was reading. My hope is 15% of people coming in will understand the irony and will get a good laugh, and maybe 75% will just click on this and understand something about Bitcoin. Then the second section is, sure, okay, Bitcoin is okay, but Bitcoin hex is better. And I put all the rhetoric of Richard Hart, and I put a link the link of to Wambo to fail, which explains exactly how the hex scam works. So the pseudo Ponzi scheme is not really a Ponzi; it's a little bit more articulate. Is explained very well. And then the third section is, sure, okay, Zax but X is better, but Zax is even better, even much better. And so basically, I expanded all the dishonest talking points of Richard into something more. Like, Richard says that you can get you can get twice the you can, I don't know, 100% profit in 2 months. I will say 200% profits in 1 month. I just doubled any single claim, and basically the idea was to exaggerate any kind of rhetoric, and that was all. But the end, the last section was, but your own copycat meta scam is the absolute best. So the idea is, why stop here? You should actually take the same smart contract I took, and you should improve on that, creating something even more powerful. Like, I give some suggestions down there, and the base of this smart contract, I didn't really copy the hex smart contract because it was very convoluted. I did copy the great Ponzi ICO.win contract by Josh Cincinnati, which is I don't know if you have ever seen this website. It is Ponzi. It's Ponzico.win, and it's great. You have to, yeah. I really want people to read it, to read the white paper, and of course to invest Ether there because it's great. It's very very funny, and so yeah, I finished this website. Then I put a writing with the URL on the window behind myself, and I covered it with my shoulders so that nobody could see it. And then I put my Ethereum T-shirt, the one that I used at the Riga for my pro shitcoin talk, which was very very familiar for people following me, but completely unfamiliar for Richard and others. And I had a hoodie on top of that. So I started discussing seriously, like accepting all his point, and he was very disoriented back then because he didn't expect me to be so submissive. Probably he did some research and he knew that I was toxic and maximalist and so on. So he was a little bit disoriented, and I set my clock to 35 minutes because I said I cannot give more than 35 minutes of my day to Richard Hart. So that's the maximum I can do. And gradually I started to unzip my hoodie and to show off the Ethereum while I was talking and being basically a yes man for Richard. Started to strip with my Ethereum t-shirt, and then I started to move my head to reveal the hex.win, the Zuxbucks.win written, and it was, I think it was very funny. Richard was very very good because at the beginning he didn't understand. When he started to understand, he faced a very difficult dilemma: how to react. Like, do you get mad? Do you laugh with me? What do you do? It's like, you cannot admit like, okay, man, you got me. Okay, I'm a scammer, and you are making fun of me. Or he couldn't really play the victim because it was all very polite in a way. So he didn't know what to do. He was very able because basically I think that for at least 10 minutes he went on pretending that nothing happened. Like, he
Yes.
started. It was very. You could see in his face that he was a little bit pissed, but he was like keeping the cool and pretending that nothing was happening. But then something happened because Peter McCormack wrote me and he said, "Hey man, do you still have the Zoom link for Richard?" I said, "Okay, here's the link." And so he entered the link, starting to insult him like scammer, pussy. And the nice thing is that the previous, let's call it, debate with Peter, Richard was basically still very in control because it was very calm, and it was able to control. But this new debate, I think it was effectively true. I mean, it was a good one to move because I push him pretty hard into this surreal moment, and then Peter started to insult him, and so basically it was very. I think at the end it was exhausted. I mean, in the great scheme of things, it doesn't really matter because now he's rich anyway, and his scam basically worked because he got, I don't know. I mean,
Seven.
of course, Hex, yeah,
Was it the?
Hex collapsed, but the Ether in the address is a lot. There's a lot of stuff, and he dumped everything in the market, so probably a few $millions, right?
Yeah, like I was gonna say, I saw, I forget who tweeted it out, but he well, I shouldn't say he, but miraculously the ETH at the address, I think it was like $7 million worth, was moved in
Yeah.
chunks. So who knows where it went?
Yeah, the mystery.
The mystery.
Nobody knows. The poor third world priest moved for third world.
It was
opera.
I every time I would listen to him talk about that address, it was the most ridiculous. And I just want to go back to this because what a lot of people don't get about Richard is that he is incredibly charismatic and he is a very good speaker. So
Yeah.
he knows a lot. He is not a stupid guy. He knows a lot. He knows how to speak well. He's actually worldly. He can speak on multiple different topics. So he can give you the illusion that it's all making sense.
Yeah,
You,
yeah.
you know?
I would say he is one of the best scammers from a scammy professional point of view. He's very, very talented. It's a shame that he cannot use his talent in an honest way, but he's very talented.
I
That's no doubt.
I have to admit, I did enjoy his act when he was a Bitcoin maximalist, or
Yeah, yeah,
maximalish. Sorry,
yeah.
like I used to, when I first got into this and I was a noob and I didn't know any better. Like I would watch his YouTubes and I was just like, you know what? I'm like, this guy's like ultra confident, like, and he, regardless of Bitcoin, he's managed to make from what he explained, a great business. And he's always said, he's like, nobody can ever point to me and say, this guy scammed me,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
and it's like, just to me anyways, it's like, just because you may have managed to, get some Teflon around you, it doesn't mean that you're not a scammer.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. I mean,
it's like
maybe
lack
people
of
can.
proof. Like lack of
Yeah. Yeah.
proof isn't
Exactly.
evidence.
Yeah, deniability. Yeah,
you know
everybody suspects that, but nobody can prove that. I mean, after hacks, I don't think there is much of a debate anymore. But I
no,
mean,
there isn't.
this space always surprises me. So maybe I will see the rehabilitation of rich. I mean, the memory in the so-called crypto space is very short, and the gullibility is very very high. So maybe it will be rehabilitated soon. But the point is that I think Hex was a little bit like an exit scam. So he prepared the the battlefield for a while, and I don't think he expects to use a lot of deniability after this. Now he made all the money. I don't know. Maybe he will move to some other field. I don't know.
He seems kind of quiet since that ETH moved.
I wonder. Yeah, since the sub Satoshi price,
Oh, look at
I
that.
wonder why.
Oh man. So by the way, just so you know, I want to go back to stuff that you said. I am going to post links to ponzico.win, obviously zuxbucks.win, and
Yeah.
and of course I shout out back to Durgigi, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoin-resources.com. That is one of the, and I also got the book, the 21 lessons from Durgigi,
Yeah.
and
Great.
yeah, we will post a link to the to that site in the show notes as well. So thank you.
Thanks. Oh, so since I'm shilling, I
Yes.
go back to shill as well the workshop. So basically, as I told you before, right now I'm trying to move from consultancy to education because it's less profitable in a way, but more fun. I enjoy teaching. I'm doing mostly B2B workshops, so I'm teaching banks and companies. But we are trying a little bit to build B2C offers. And one of the first experiment will be in Las Vegas during the Unconfiscatable conference, unconfiscatable.com. That's a link to Tom Vase website because Tom Vase is basically the main organizer of the conference. And the conference is Las Vegas on the February 22, 23. But on 2021, there is my workshop. The idea is to have 2 days in order to get people that are very very passionate about Bitcoin but not technically skilled. Because I mean, it's not that there is like developers and stupid people. Maybe you have managers, political activists, community leaders, investors, finance guys, but intellectuals, but they cannot really use command line and they never installed the Linux machine. So we cannot really assume that everybody who is smart and functional in society and proficient and passionate is necessarily thus possesses the good skill, the right skills in order to become at least let's say level zero Bitcoin user. So the goal of this today's workshop is to get these people in with possibly zero previous knowledge of technical type, and to get out with some knowledge about turning a Raspberry Pi that we will provide into a Bitcoin node plus Lightning Network node plus maybe if we manage join market coin join node and an Electrum multi-sig setup with different hardware wallets, cold card, and ledger in order to do cold storage for funds. And so the idea, and a BTC Pay server to let's say fire up a self-hosted website accepting Bitcoin payment. So the idea is that, of course, people will receive the Raspberry Pi and the ledger and the cold card and all the documentation, and we will teach them and help them and assist them for 2 days. The goal is not to get them out of that with a functioning product, but with a lot of knowledge in order to get back home and spend the next weeks building again from scratch the kind of setup they want. And if it works, I will probably propose this kind of seminar again and again around. It's a little bit it's very time consuming to prepare it in a good way because I mean some developers are like pissed that I'm doing this because they say that they will take 15 minutes to set up this machine and not 2 days. And some people really thinks that they can never get to that point in 2 days because it's too much stuff. So it's very tricky. Also, the attendee will probably be the attendees will be not perfectly homogeneous. So yeah, I think we will refine it during the next months, and then maybe I will start to go around with this kind of workshop a little bit.
I really like that, by the way. I mean, I've built
Thanks.
now 10 nodes, so I can tell you that it's, you know what, to their point, yeah, depending on the technical skill. But the thing is that, to your point, everybody's going to have a different level, and everybody is going to, grasp it differently. So although one person may speed right through it, another person is going to actually want to understand each step that it is that they're doing. So I
Yeah,
think it's cool
which is
that you're
also the
doing
point
this.
because, yeah, because I mean, we were discussing we can do just a script that will self-install most of the things, but that's not the point, right? I mean, if you just want to run the script that we provide you, just buy a node or buy a node by yourself or by other. But the point is not just that people has running nodes, but the people is at least prima facie able to vaguely understand the high level of what the fuck they are doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they get back trusting completely a class of developers. So the idea is to really break down. I mean, PGP. I mean, they will not build the software from source because that's too much for today's. But they will check signatures on software or compiled software, which is already something that people. I mean, it will be some PGP stuff. We will try to explain each and every one, every Linux command line shell command. I mean, instead of just saying write this stuff, I will we will try to explain what they are doing and why, which is something that is very very difficult to find in computer science. You have a giant asymmetry. People who knows their shit, they go very very fast, and people who even very intelligent and and very people of culture. But I know of technology managers that right now they really invest and work on technology, and they don't have a self-hosted Linux server since probably more than 30 years, and now they are only used to use their smartphone. So these are smart people. They are not morons. But really, the kind of well, let's be even more extreme. Except for the developers, nobody is running a self-hosted server anymore home ever, basically.
Pretty much. You're absolutely right about that. And you know what? As you were talking and explaining, the workshop and everything, I was just thinking, Bitcoin is helping us bootstrap the age of responsibility. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Very good, very good take. I agree. Which is it will be a compromise, of course. I think there are two visions clashing right now. One vision is people will never do this. I mean, it's impossible to teach teenagers I mean, teenagers right now they don't even use Google anymore. They just use social networks and they get any information directly from there on a smartphone. And my grandma, she was able to use some cell phone stuff, but not for sure a command line interface. So one point is people will never migrate to this kind of old nerdy stuff in majority. So you need to do super simple turnkey interface which are hiding every kind of complexity. But if you do that, we miss the point entirely, because if we hide complexity too much, we pretend that something very complex and difficult like security and privacy and state resistance and censorship resistance, it's simple. It is not. If you simplify for convenience, that's fine. But if you think that if you think that that's a simple thing that like privacy scam coins, just use this coin, like just use Zcash, and now you're private. Except that people don't know what they are doing, so they will use Zcash with normal non-shielded transactions, and they will basically give away everything way worse than Bitcoin. Or they will just use some kind of green or dash stuff with anonymity set of three people literally exchanging, so everybody knows that it's them. So we cannot really reduce complexity too much, because otherwise it's meaningless. On the other side, you have the developers that say, I was trained 30 years ago to do command line. This is the way. If you need a graphic interface, you're stupid. And I mean, since I spend my life in my basement with my keyboard, I don't see the reason why you should not have a keyboard in front of you right now. But that's not the way that the world works anymore. I'm not in front of my keyboard for the rest of my day today. I will just have a smartphone. So I think that developers will learn how to maximize the simplification as long as it's possible and not disruptive. And people will also have to learn how to learn something complex, because you do have to, like in important stuff. I mean, delegation is great because division of labor is based on delegation. We don't have to be all doctors, all developers, or policemen. We have to delegate because we have to differentiate, diversify, and specialize. So that's fine. But important strategic stuff, we have to maintain at least a high level control of what we are doing and who we are delegating and why and how. So, for example, like medical emergency and first succors for medical emergencies. You don't have to become a medical doctor, but you do have to at least know how to treat like a burn or a trauma very very fast. You have to know what is the right hospital, what is the right number. Same goes for policemen. You cannot become a soldier if you are just a civil, if you are just not a soldier. But if nobody knows how to defend innocents from an aggressor in a public place, then you just wait for the police and basically everybody's already dead. So you need some degree of redundancy for super important and strategic stuff, which is the same if you think about that of literacy, of literal literacy. So teaching people to write and read was incredible to think of 2 centuries ago. 2 centuries ago, reading and writing was for super elite niches of intellectuals, like almost wizards. It was not something that it was impossible that the teenager can write and the grandma can write. Writing is for the writing and reading cast. Right now, in some countries, kind of everybody kind of writes and reads. Of course, that's not so true for teenagers anymore, but at least they can do use some kind of written communication, and so people can learn. People did learn. Think about driving in Europe, where you don't have the automatic transmission. Driving is kind of complex, and it takes time to learn. And it's not that people just ask it to car producers, guys, you just have, I mean, I don't have the time to learn to drive. Just give me a car that I can press a button and it goes. Because they understood that it was dangerous, that there were lives at stake. So they had to learn how to push the brakes and accelerator. They did have to learn complexity because you couldn't abstract away complexity too much. Of course, you don't have to be able to build a car, but you are able to responsibly drive a car. And the same goes with Bitcoin. I don't think that people will all transform into hackers, but it's impossible that Bitcoin just becomes a one button iPhone app, because that's not the point.
I really like that take. That's a really interesting take, So it's like that's exactly the point. There's going to be some kind of redundancy for the critical functions, right? Like there has to be in order for something to
Yeah.
survive, right? And for something to thrive. But at the same time, you're going to have this variation of people in between, with varying technical capabilities, and that everybody is able to, at the very least, be able to handle it competently at the minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
really like
And
that.
yeah, or at least even less. At least filter out competence outside of them. I mean, it's not that people just now cannot do alone. They can't even just delegate. I mean, people about computer science. Some people, they are so illiterate that they cannot even distinguish frauds from competent people. So you need to distribute the level of competence, which is at least enough high level to understand, uh, I mean, to ask different opinions and to understand to filter out the credible opinion from the obviously, at least obviously false advertisings and tricks and frauds.
Oh, sorry about that. I just realized I was on mute. Uh,
No, no, no,
it,
no, no. I did hear.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so I'll just cut that out, that part. But it's interesting that you mentioned that because it is really difficult to distinguish. Like I could tell you when I first got into, forget about Bitcoin, but just quote unquote the crypto space, like it's so easy to look legitimate, and unfortunately you have these other people that, can seem like they're experts and
Yeah.
point to something and say, oh well, that's legitimate and here are the reasons why. And it's like, if you don't know any better, then you can believe it. And it's like I've said in the past, it's like, yeah, when I didn't know shit, all of that tech seems plausible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not something new. When people were discovering radiation, radioactive phenomena in the last millennium and the last century, this it was something strange and new and unknown. And so a lot of charlatans, they started to sell radioactive water to drink. There was like a famous, I don't remember the name, a famous golf player that was like he had some kind of back pain or something. So he started to drink a lot of radioactive water. And he was feeling great until his jaw fell off completely. So, and that was sold like in grocery stores, and there were like advertising on mainstream newspaper, like make your radiation bath today, and you will feel full of energy. Because I mean, why? Because it's something new, so nobody understands what's going on, and so they cannot even distinguish obvious charlatan from serious people. And the problem that you have is that how to fight it is not trivial as well, because you have an overtone window problem. Like, for example, you have a lot of degrees of obvious frauds. So at the beginning, you have like, let's think about altcoins. At the beginning, you have Litecoin. So there is some histamine. There was so the claims are technically fake. Like ASIC resistant is a fake claim, and everybody competent is telling people that Litecoin cannot be ASIC resistant because there is not such a thing as ASIC resistance. So it will just be ASIC hardware, which is worse for decentralization. And then they say that they have faster blocks, which is basically faster for confirmation. And then the expert people explain that that's not true, because the confirmation time is not how much time is about how much security. So it's about how much it costs to double spend and to reorg. And so one Litecoin confirmation is surely it's faster than a Bitcoin confirmation, but it's way less than than a fraction of its security. So that's just a stupid point. So most of the claims of Litecoin were fake. And the launch style was very dubious, with this kind of unfair advantage. And so a lot of competent people was calling Litecoin a scam, and everybody competent agreed that Litecoin was a scam. But then crazier stuff arrived, like BitShares with this ICO. I mean, the pre-mine was considered unethical before, but then the ICO came, and compared to that, the pre-mine was considered not so bad. And then BitShares was super crazy. Daniel Larimer with a lot of very non-credible claims, a lot of science fiction, and people were so. I mean, this scam was so worse than it was actually. It was started to feeling unfair to call Litecoin a scam as much as BitShares, because BitShares was really incredibly scammy. Then Ethereum came out, and Ethereum basically was, I mean, Ethereum was the apotheosis, because there was a pre-mine, there was a Swiss, there was a for-profit company selling their shares to the non-profit, then closing down the for-profit with the foundation in Switzerland, with a lot of basically a lot of money grabbing. Most of the budget was not spent for development, but was just spent for marketing. And then there was impossible claims like Turing completeness, security, war computer, completely scalable, and all these claims were completely fake, and actually they were lies. So it was a fraud. But compared to that, Litecoin at this point was like completely. I mean, at this point, Litecoin seems like something sound. And now I mean, fast forward, you have OneCoin, BitConnect, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, Hex, and now the situation is so bad that compared to that, Ethereum sounds super legit. So people is pissed if you call Ethereum a scam because they say, "Oh, come on, man, like, you cannot call the same way Ethereum and OneCoin," which is true. But because the Overton Windows is moving far on the scam side.
There's a new one going on. Well, I don't know how new it is, but there's Cloud Token. And this is the same garbage as OneCoin and Plus Token, and they've gotten much more sophisticated. I actually tweeted out about this, and so this one is like you can't even get on their page without getting some secret referral, but it's really not that difficult. You can go Google some bullshit referral code and then enter it in. I did a little bit of research on this. They're very smart, okay? They have an engine, an artificial intelligence engine, okay, that makes profits. And guess what? You know what the name of the engine is? It's a good one.
No.
Jarvis. No. Jarvis AI, which is the same one from Iron Man.
Yeah, Tony Stark. Yeah,
that's
Tony
right.
Stark,
So, it's legit.
Yeah. Well, so it's how to deal with this stuff. People like to pontificate about maximalist and toxicity and be nice and don't be close-minded, but it's very difficult to decide how to deal with this stuff, because on one hand it seems that if you scream scam all the time, then nobody listen anymore. So you should just keep the word that you should just hold your jabs for the worst stuff. But what is the worst stuff? Because the obvious blatant scams, the one which are very obvious, like OneCoin, people falling for that, I'm sorry, but they are probably beyond saving. I don't think that you can actually convince somebody falling for OneCoin. Where are you even starting? They are really their cognitive problems. Either they know that it's a fraud, they're just trying to scam other people faster, and so you cannot really, you don't have to help them because they're just trying to scam other people. Or if they believe in OneCoin, they are so deep into that I don't think you can help them. On the other hand, more subtle things like Ethereum, I genuinely believe that there are a lot of good script kiddies and web designers that are wasting time and reputation and possibly also brain neurons into that kind of stuff. So do you have to focus attacking the most obvious ones or the most subtle ones? That's not a trivial question, in my opinion, and I'm not sure about the answer. But I'm not entirely convinced. I'm not sold that we should just call out OneCoin and then BitConnect may be almost legit, and then Ethereum is great. I think that we should keep the Overton window. I know it's hard. I know that it's like all the world is crazy right now, but we have to keep some kind of rationality grounding. Otherwise, the Overton window will just keep moving forever.
I totally agree. I really do. I love the way that I really love the way that you think, man. And this hour has just absolutely flown by for me, Giacomo. I know you got to get going, and I got to get going too. So we're gonna cut it, but it's been
we can continue another time. We just took like 3 months to to fix the day, so it will not be difficult.
Yeah, no, but seriously, I totally appreciate you coming on, and man, it was definitely worth 3 months worth of going back and forth with you to get on and chat with you, man. You are absolutely awesome.
Thank you. Okay, second payment sent right now.
Sweet. All right, man. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Hope everybody enjoyed that conversation with Giacomo. It was absolutely amazing. It took me like 3 months to get that interview done with him. So anyways, well worth the wait. Anyways, his contact details will be in the show notes. As always, if you want to contact me, my email is coinicarus@funwithbitcoin.com. On Twitter or Telegram, I'm just @coinicarus. And of course, if you want to support the show, head on over to moetarags.com and hit up All Clothing and then Fun with Bitcoin podcast, and you can check out all of our sweet merch. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening, and catch you all next time.